looking at the Arab Revolt. This was the revolt that happened against the Ottoman Empire, and mostly it was the people who were involved in this. I mean, the people who were fighting were the Arabs. However, the whole revolt was orchestrated, like organized, you could say funded and supported, and also like some false promises were made by the British and the French. Basically, the you could say in general, the Allies' power in the World War One. So inshallah, we would be looking at this whole Arab revolt that happened. We would inshallah go through the background first, like kind of some historical background to understand the context where this whole revolt happened. We would also discuss the things happened during the revolt, inshallah ta'ala. And then after that, we would look at the aftermath of the revolt, like the things that followed. How what happened to the Muslim land. How Muslim land was divided and things like that. So inshallah ta'ala, it's going to be a very interesting story. I hope inshallah it would be interesting. So let's begin. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So let me just put this down here. Okay, I think this should be fine. Okay, perfect. So the Arab Revolt. Again, as I said, a revolt from there were two major people who were involved, like the Ottomans and the Arabs. Now, this is the time, the theater, you could say, of World War One. And at this time, the Ottomans joined Germany and Austria-Hungary. They were like in World War One, there were allies and there were axis. Allies were British, French, Russia, and their colonies, and to somehow United States as well. And there were the Axis power were Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. And because of since this was World War One, like Ottomans were fighting at many different places against the British and French, and against the Allies' power. And British, they wanted to find a way to weaken the Ottomans because one of the you could say the biggest strength for Ottomans was obviously Islam. People were able to unite against the British because of Islam, right? So that was a strength for Muslims. So British wanted to find a way to destroy that strength. They wanted to find the weak, find to weaken the Arabs and the Ottomans. So one of the first things that they did was that they went ahead and they talked to someone. If I Yeah, so they made this thing, which is called as McMahon Hussein correspondence. Now, what happened inside this? This happened between two people. I mean, two people representing their own parties, you could say. The first person was this guy, Hussein bin Ali. He was the Sharif of Mecca. He was actually, kept as a Sharif of Mecca by the Ottomans before, so he was one of the very influential figures during the time of Ottomans. But he was obviously Arab, and since he was influential, like people followed him. He was also, as you can see in his name, Al-Hashmi, meaning he is, yeah, like his lineage goes all the way back to the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So he was the Sharif of Mecca, and from the British side, there was this guy, Sir Henry McMahon. Now, this guy, and you could see he was as you can see here, he was the British High Commissioner to Egypt. So Egypt was actually colonized before World War One. So it was under the influence of British, and he was fighting against the Ottomans, or the British were fighting against the Ottomans from Egypt. And like so, Ottomans. So yeah, this pact happened between these two people, Sharif Hussein and McMahon. And in this, the British, they came to him, and actually this guy, T.E. Lawrence, or Thomas Edward Lawrence, he was one of the main, you could say, the gatekeeper between the British and the Sharif Hussein. Like he actually, like this guy, he studied somewhere. He did his master's, or I don't know, PhD thesis somewhere in Syria, meaning he was originally studied in some British college. Like, oh yeah, it is Jesus College in Oxford. But yeah, he was working in Syria somewhere under the Ottomans, and he was studying there. And later on, he joined British in Egypt, like British Army in Egypt. And he was one of the one of the like delegations from the British towards the Arabs. And he went to Hussein, or Sharif Hussein, and the Arabs, and he said that, look, you are under the Ottomans. Like, why do you want to be under the Ottomans? Like, you should be, you should be on the top. You should revolt against Ottomans. And British in this McMahon, where is that? Yeah, just a second. Yeah, in this McMahon Hussein correspondence, they said to Sharif Hussein that if British would win the war, if British and French would win World War One, and they would be successful in defeating the Ottomans, then in that case, um, British and French, like they would give the land of the Arab, meaning the Hijaz, like or the modern day Saudi Arabia, and also the other like areas, so like the Syria, Palestine, Iraq, like Lebanon, Jordan. So they would give all of these lands to Hussein, Sharif Hussein, and they would make him the single Khalifa for all that land. So this was kind of obviously a promise that was done by British, that was given by British and the French to Sayyid Hussein and the Arabs who were fighting, who later on got ready to fight against the Ottomans. Um, so Ottomans, as I said previously, they were fighting on many different places. Like they were fighting on like 20, I guess, different places for 20 fronts, and this was one of the things. During World War One, one of the things that Ottomans were trying to get was they were trying to get Egypt back into their hands from British. So they were fighting there. Now, if I open like if I open this thing, okay, just a second. Okay, let's look at this map. So you could see this is the area of Hijaz, like right here. This is the land, like this is somewhere here on the top, there would be Turkey, and somewhere here on the bottom here would be Egypt, right? You could see the Muslims or the Ottomans who were protecting Mecca and Medina somewhere here. Their only connection, only way of supply was from here. Like there was a railway that was going from Hijaz. It was called as actually the Hijaz Railway, and it was actually connecting the Ottomans with the Hijaz, and that was the supply. So one of the things that the Arab revolts they did was that they wanted to attack the railway itself so that they obviously can they can they can cut the supply, and then people in the Hijaz or the Ottomans in the Hijaz would automatically surrender. So they did a lot of attacks, by the way. And one person, his name was Fakhruddin Pasha, or Omar, or Fakiri Pasha, whatever you want to call him. He's actually nicknamed as the Defender of Medina. Yeah, that's his name. He's called as the Defender of Medina, or there's also other names that he's called as Lion of the Desert or the Tiger of the Desert. And these two names are actually given to him by the British. The reason for this was because after, if I scroll down, after this thing, our armistice of Mudros, it's I think this thing, yeah. This happened like 30 October 1980. After this time, the Ottomans obviously, they accepted their defeat in World War One against the Allies power in World War One. And by the way, by the time Ottomans joined World War One, like it was already kind of understood by everybody that okay, Germany has no plans to win the war. Like Germany, like they were not successful in their conquest of the French, like of the French Empire, right? So they already everybody knew that okay, it's not going to happen. But Ottomans were, still fighting there. And Ottomans, obviously, like even in the Arab Revolt, like Ottomans were supplied from German weapons and other German defense systems as well. But what's important about Fakiri Pasha or Fakhruddin Pasha is that even after the armistice of Mudros, like even after when Ottomans officially accepted their defeat, even after that, Fakhruddin Pasha refused to surrender. He refused to surrender Medina to the British or to the Arab revolt. And like he was obviously like they were going through very difficult time. You could see here there were many attacks on the Hijaz railway that I was talking of. You could see like there were around 130 major attacks in 1917, and there were hundreds of attacks in 1918. And on one single day, like April 30, 1980, on one single day there were 300 bombs that they had to that were sent against them. So even after that, they were successful, in defending Medina for a long time. And like they were obviously, as I said, going through a very difficult time. There's this thing that he like his address to his troops in Medina, and this is very like emotional and it's very like heart touching, I would say. He said to his soldiers that soldiers, I appeal to you in the name of the Prophet, my witness. I command you to defend his city, to defend him, meaning Prophet ﷺ, and his city, meaning Medina, to the last Carthage and the last breath, irrespective of the strength of the enemy. And then he said, May Allah help us and may the prayers of Muhammad ﷺ be with us. And then later on, Hussein, the Sharif Hussein was giving him lots of like offers or different offers that okay, surrender and we'll give you this and that and all that. Um, then he wrote a letter to Sharif Hussein, like he wrote a letter back to him, and he said to him that and like first few lines of the letter are like very powerful, and they completely expose what was wrong with the Arab revolt, what was why the Arab revolts were the wrong thing. It just exposed them. He says, in the name of Allah, the Omnipotent, to him who and to him here him refers to Sharif Hussein. So he's saying that to him who broke the power of Islam, causes bloodshed among Muslims, jeopardized the caliphate or the khilafah of the commanders of the faithful, meaning Amirul Mu'mineen, and exposed it to the domination of British. Subhanallah, this is what happened, and he told them, that okay, in the letter, later he described that he was sleeping and he got to see Prophet Muhammad SAW in his dream, and because of that, he is now considered, Prophet SAW and protection of Medina as very important thing. He would, I'm busying myself with strengthening the defenses, building roads and squares in Medina, and he's saying, trouble me not with your useless offers. So he defended Medina for a long time, and it was later on, during this time, January 9, 1990. So from 30 October 1918, when Ottomans were officially defeated, to 9th January 1990, to this time, he was able to defend Medina. And at this time, he was actually arrested by some of his own men, and he was sent to Abdullah bin Hussein, and he was actually son of for Salih Hussein, right? But yeah, this is what happened. He was able to defend Medina for such a long time. Um, Now, what happened after this? Obviously, Ottomans were defeated. Ottomans, everything about they had nothing to like stand. And British won the lands of Ottomans, and after that, um, like while British and French, while they made this MacMahon Hussein corresponding, and they were making promise to Sharif Hussein to do these things, uh, the British and the French, they were also secretly planning uh, something called a Sykes-Picot Agreement. Now, Sykes-Picot's Sykes-Picot Agreement was a secret treaty, you could say, between the United Kingdom and France, with descent from Russian Empire and the Kingdom of Italy. And this was to define their mutual agreed spheres of influence and control in an eventual partition of the Ottoman Empire. So, while British and French uh, promised to give, the land of Arab to Sharif Hussein, they are also secretly planning to divide the land after the war among themselves. So if I go and look down here, um, this is how they divided almost. The red area was something British would be getting after the war. The blue area would be under French, and I'm assuming this green area would be for Russia. But you could see most of the other lands, like they were divided among British and French, and because obviously Arabs were weakened, Muslims were weakened in general. So you could see the land of Palestine was given to British. And while British made the Sykes-Picot Agreement, they also went ahead and did something called as the Telford Declaration. And in this Balfour Declaration, they allowed the Jewish people to settle in Palestine. They allowed it, and this was an agreement that they did with I guess, yeah, Lord Rothschild, which is like you know yeah, so they did like agreement with him, and they allowed it Jews to settle in the land of Palestine. Like it was obviously sold. The land of Palestine was given to the Jews to settle, and we all know what happened after that. In 1948, like few years, this is like almost 50, like 30 years after that. after like almost 30 years, um, there was a political mess that the British did in the land of Palestine that they themselves were not even able to handle. They themselves, they themselves were like not able to control, and because of that, they gave the land to the sovereignty of the Jews, and they formed, Israel. And because of that, in the land in which Israel was formed, like around 700,000 Palestinian Arabs were made to exile from their own lands, and these were the major places on which the exodus happened. And again, this is a big story that happened, and these were the blue areas here are the areas on which major Jewish population were settled. But this created a political mess later on. But this is sometime like this happened like 30 years after Balfour Declaration. But what I'm saying from this is that this thing, all of these things, the division of Muslim lands into all of these different places, different countries, is something that was told to us even by the Prophet ﷺ. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that people will soon summon one another to attack you as people when inviting others to share their dish. Like, when you have a dish, like a big dish, and you invite others to have food, and everybody takes their part of their food. This is something like that. Like the countries of Muslims were divided in such a way, and Prophet ﷺ said that okay, this is going to happen, and Subhanallah, it did happen. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that, and somebody actually asked him, um, "Will that be because of a small number? Because we will be small in number." Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, "No, you will be numerous at that time. Obviously Muslims will be in large amount, but you will be scum and rubbish like that is carried like that carried down by a torrent. And Allah will take the fear of you from the breast of your enemies." So Allah will take the fear of Muslims from British and French, you could say. Um, and last, enervation in your hearts. And somebody asked, okay, what's enervation or wahid? So Prophet Muhammad said that the love of the world and the dislike of the dead. SubhanAllah, and this is something we see even today. There's a love, like people love the world and they don't like death. So Prophet Muhammad said these things, and SubhanAllah, they are true today as well. And with regards to what Sharif Hussein and his people did against the Ottomans, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that all believers take neither the Jews nor Christians as your guardians or as your allies. They are guardians to one another. Whoever does so will be counted as one of them. And surely Allah does not guide the wrongdoing people. So you could see this is what happened, in this whole arena. Um, like the lands of Muslims were divided, and they were divided by making Muslims to fight against Muslims. This was, kind of the master plan of the British and the French to make, to make the civil war within Ottomans so that Ottomans would be divided. There are lots of interesting lessons that we must learn from these things. The first thing is that, the unity of Muslims is very important because when you're not divided, the enemies of Islam would come and they would divide you. So it's important to understand that. The second thing is that we must learn history. History would tell us, what patterns, or history would tell us, the things that happened in the past, so that we can learn them and we can understand the what do we say? We can understand the tactics, the ways in which Muslims have been destroyed in the past. So I hope this whole story would have been beneficial, inshallah ta'ala. One last thing that I want to say, like you could say, all of these pages that I've opened, like they are, you could say, like they are mostly they are Wikipedia pages, and like a lot of people might say that okay, that's the best source of history to learn. But I wouldn't obviously say that's the best way to learn history, Islamic history especially, because facts always a lot of these times facts are interpretable, statistics are interpretable, and because of them they are subjective to whoever is writing them, and that is why you find sometimes information in on Wikipedia, even on Wikipedia, which is half true, but since it is half true, um, you know things can be um, it can be manipulated. The information can be manipulated, and a whole different narrative can be produced. So I wouldn't say Wikipedia is the best source to learn history, but I was just showing you guys these pages so that you understand that like I'm letting you guys know the story from credible like sources. So I hope this was an interesting session, inshallah ta'ala. Please subscribe to our channel for more such videos. Inshallah, we would, now and then, every now and then, inshallah, we would be keeping such videos as well. Yeah, please support us, inshallah ta'ala. Yeah, jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.